Adam Mockler, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Great to see you, my friend. Hour goes by just way too quickly, so I'm going to jump right into it because I got a million questions for you. All right, so Adam, I said, okay, so what does Trump's raising of the East Wing to build that big, beautiful ballroom say about the administration's priorities, as well as the disregard for history and the function of the White House?
Yeah, all of Trump's priorities seem masturbatory and gluttonous, to say the least. It's all what he wants to do, while the American people are suffering. I mean, I've been doing a lot of research for these debates, and Black unemployment in particular is skyrocketing, which is usually an early indicator in a weakening economy. And now unemployment among my generation is skyrocketing, which is also an early indicator because younger people will get laid off first. And unemployment overall is beginning to rise. Things are not going well in the economy right now, and Donald Trump would rather focus on, tearing down the White House. It's definitely very he's doing it for his own ego. He wants to be seen as a builder. I think he's really desperate to leave a mark in any way he can. He's obsessed with being seen as the peacemaker, the only president who can make peace, even though that fell through. He's obsessed with leaving his mark on the White House, on this, on that, and his priorities are all in the wrong place. It's pretty embarrassing.
Well, okay, so leave your mark on, I guess, history of America. You have the 250th anniversary coming up. He's going to be featured, his image, on both sides of commemorative coin. You have a member of the House of Representatives that wants to introduce a House resolution to have Trump's image carved into Mount Rushmore. We have this gigantic image that's draped over, I think it's one of the federal buildings that is there in D.C. On top of that, you're going to be building, because he has another resolution in, to build the Arc de Trump to rival the Arch de Triomphe that will sit somewhere facing both the White House as well as the Lincoln Memorial. I can go on and on about the various different things that Trump has done, that his acolytes want done, all within which to honor him in a manner that I don't think any other president in history has asked for.
Yeah, it is. It reminds me of the Mar-a-Lago Accords. Did you hear about that? When he placed tariffs on every single country, him and his advisors had this theory that they could use these tariffs as leverage to get the leader of every single developed country over to Mar-a-Lago. He didn't want to do it at the White House. He wanted to do it at Mar-a-Lago so he could do the Mar-a-Lago Accords and reshape the global economy. Obviously, none of this manifested. His tariffs have been a mess. He hasn't really gotten anything out of them, but it shows you his mindset. He wants to do something historic, and he's the announcement president. There's this really interesting, double standard that happens where Donald Trump gets to make an announcement. He gets to sell that announcement, and everybody only knows about the greatness of the announcement, but then it falls through in the days following. Just think about the recent ceasefire where they were putting him on magazine covers and then it fell through. Meanwhile, with Democrats, we don't make the announcement. Biden never talked about any of the good stuff. We just focus on the fallout of it. So with Afghanistan, he could have been like, I just ended a war that was taking place for 20 years. Instead, we only heard about the fallout. So, Republicans seem to be better at selling, as Mark Cuban says. Democrats need to learn how to sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's one big, gigantic marketing scheme. So let me ask you this. How does the construction of an opulent ballroom, because it's massive. In fact, it's more than 3 times the size of the White House itself. How does this construction of an opulent ballroom reflect Trump's obsession with legacy over the real needs of governance?
It's a vehicle for corruption. That's how it reflects it. It reflects it so perfectly because what he's done is use this ballroom to funnel money into it. He's created all of these different buckets that people can funnel money into, like his Trump coin, his other crypto coin, World Liberty Financial. And then after people funnel money into it, he gives them favors. So what you've seen is him sue multiple people. He's sued multiple media organizations. He's sued YouTube. YouTube paid $22 million in order to drop a lawsuit from the effing president. And where did that $22 million go? straight into the ballroom. He's making sure that people are paying into the ballroom. When it comes to the presidential library as well, a lot of that payment is coming from, I believe, Paramount. Paramount was trying to merge with another company. Trump was suing them for some interview or something, and they paid 16, or it was ABC maybe. They paid 16.
It was ABC, 16 million.
Yeah. So there's so many lawsuits, I keep conflating them. But yeah, that's insane. ABC paid 16 million into the presidential library. Yeah.
Right. It was 15 million to the library, 1 million for legal fees to pay the lawyers. I mean, and that's only one. CBS did another. You had a bunch of schools that also were required to pay in. You have to admit, it's unique, to say the least.
It's unique in its corruption. I mean, there's a story that I always go back to. There's a New York Times article that talks about how Hillary Clinton in the early 90s, when her and Bill took office, there was a months-long scandal because she made $100,000 off of cattle futures a decade prior. A decade before the Clintons took office, Hillary Clinton made about $100,000 off of cattle futures. This was a months-long investigation and scandal in the 90s. Today, Melania Trump met with Jeff Bezos and got a $40 million Amazon deal. Donald Trump cuts, deals with foreign leaders with jets, and he wants to return us to this pre-constitutional order where he can just be so transactional that he acts like a king, and it doesn't even make the news. It doesn't make the news. Think about the double standard. Hillary Clinton in the 90s had a multiple month-long news cycle. Meanwhile, most Americans don't even know about the $40 million book deal. It's like, what the hell? How do we get the word out there?
Well, by the way, in all fairness, too, both Michelle Obama and Barack Obama were given, what was it, like $100 million or $60 million by Netflix, within which to produce shows for cable, for their streaming service. I'm not sure that they've actually accomplished a single Netflix program.
What year did that happen? Wasn't that after?
No, it was like 3 years ago. 3 years ago.
There's a difference. When they're out of office and they're doing like random stuff like that, I understand that. I mean, it's still a little bit weird, but Donald Trump is in office and Melania met with Jeff Bezos at the White House. Like, the incentive structures there are just so different. It's crazy.
Big time. Meanwhile, going back to this East Wing demolition and the extravagant construction, if there's a ballroom that's needed, sure. If we could get various other companies to pay for it, I have a problem with that, but willing to take it. The part that I have a real problem with, more than anything, is Trump's messaging on fiscal responsibility versus the spectacle that's going on right now. Because I see this as a massive, massive spectacle. I see it as just an aberration from and an abdication of fiscal responsibility as you shut down the government. All of a sudden, went from $200 million to a $300 million ballroom. And I assure you, by the time they finish, that ballroom will be $500 million.
Yeah. And remember when Trump went on that really long the tantrum on True Social about the guy who was mowing the lawn or whatever, or no, he was pushing a wheelbarrow and he scratched the sidewalk. This shows where Donald Trump's priorities are. He's like a grumpy old man in the White House yelling at kids on the front lawn. And he's not fixing the trade war that he started. Right now, our farmers are getting cooked by China because China and Argentina are undercutting all of our soybean farmers. It's awful. And Donald Trump is sitting there quite literally throwing tantrums about a ballroom in a presidential library.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blown away. In fact, I don't believe that plans have been submitted to any agency. I know that there are obviously architectural renderings. I don't even know if there are actually construction plans that have yet to be reviewed, approved, budgeted, allocated. What happens if hypothetically some of these organizations, Meta, Amazon, Nvidia, whoever it might be, that have agreed to each put in X amount of dollars to build this ballroom. What happens if they renege? Who ends up paying for it? The American taxpayer? Again, during a government shutdown when people can't afford milk and they can't afford beef, considering beef is up like 50%. They can't afford their medication. Now what?
Yeah, and it kind of shows in and of itself, it's a big problem that all of these companies are tripping over themselves to try to invest X amount of money in Trump's ballroom because they know how uniquely transactional he is and that he will give them something in return. This type of quid pro quo is not normal for the president of the United States to be doing with random companies. And yet none of the investments that he's flaunting are real whatsoever. There's no actual incentive for any companies to, number one, invest in manufacturing plants or bring any manufacturing back to the United States when all of the tariffs are done via executive order. Like, there's no continuity between administrations. We had comprehensive trade deals with countries like South Korea. It was called Chorus, and Obama had negotiated it. It was actually a pretty solid trade deal. Trump quite literally shredded it and then taped it back together with some executive order and acted like he had some brilliant trade deal. But these aren't long lasting. There's no continuity. So no companies have the real incentive to invest things. And like you said, Americans are struggling. The government is shut down. And I just made a video a bit ago about how the Department of Homeland Security has spent the past week arguing with some random account on Twitter rather than actually helping the American people. This is the literal administration of memes and shitposting online all the time.
So you're trying to say then that the $20 trillion, because I know it initially was 17 trillion.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's 18 trillion in the next statement. Now we're even up to 20. We're up to $20 trillion, right? I mean, of investment that's coming into the United States from foreign countries and from foreign entities. So you don't believe that $20 trillion is real. And again, I want to be clear. Not million, not billion, $20 trillion.
No, there's this indicator called real fixed investment into manufacturing. It shows how much money is pouring into manufacturing plants in the United States, and it's down since Trump took office. Again, companies don't actually have the incentive to execute on these investments. There needs to be some sort of enforcement mechanism. And it can't just be more tariffs because that's just toothless at this point. There needs to be some sort of enforcement mechanism beyond that. And there doesn't seem to be any enforcement mechanism. I mean, the tariff rate between the EU and the United States, I believe as a whole, was like 1.5 before Trump took office. And now it's like 12%, and he's flaunting that as a win, but it's not. It's an incomprehensive, it's number one, an incoherent plan, but it's not comprehensive. Trade deals are comprehensive. There's so many moving pieces and spinning wheels between countries. You can't do 90 deals in 90 days. And if you look into the $18 trillion claim, now it's $20 trillion, but on the White House website, they actually claim it's $8.8 trillion, right? You dig deeper into that $8.8 trillion and they're counting insane numbers. Like with Qatar, they're saying that Qatar is investing $1 trillion, but their entire GDP is like $250 billion. With
I think
India,
it's like 400. I think it's like $400 billion is their GDP cutter. And what are they going to do? 3 years worth of GDP?
Yeah, and then with India, they're saying that India invested $500 billion, but you look into that and they're just counting bilateral trade between countries that already exist. So this is status quo trade that they're now trying to recategorize as investment to have these massively inflated numbers, but it's not manifesting anywhere. Now, what I will say is inflation hasn't gone up as much as you think it would. I think the tariffs haven't really been in place for that long. The Liberation Day tariffs only just went into effect on August 7th because he kept delaying them. But I mean, it's starting to manifest, and you'd think that the inflation would be higher, but I guess we'll have to see.
So, look, you're a smart young man. Let me ask you this question because I don't know the answer to it. And actually, I've spoken to quite a few people, and they don't know the answer to it either. The $20 trillion that Trump claims has come into the United States already from these foreign countries, these foreign entities. Is that part of the 17 trillion that Trump claims is on some tariff shelf? Or is that something separate?
I think that when he's claiming, well, I'm not sure. I was referring to the $18 trillion.
I understand, and it's just a question. He talks about $20 trillion of new investment, manufacturing investment. Is that part of the 17, 18 trillion that he claims is on a tariff shelf, or is it separate? Because combined, that would be $38 trillion. Mind you, the entire GDP of America is $28.2 trillion. So this would be $10 trillion more than the GDP of our country, which is 2.4 times greater than that of number 2, China.
That would take us out of debt, essentially. Like what this guy is claiming is that he would take the entire country out of debt with one swoop, but we see that the month-over-month deficit rate is continuing to be at the same rate. We had like one good month randomly because of some outlier, but overall, the deficit is still increasing and the debt it's insane. The interest payments are, I think like 15% of our debt every year is just in interest payments. It's insane. And Donald Trump is not making the situation better. He claims that he has, I think what's happening is he keeps on inching the number up over and over. So if you go back, at first it was like 8 trillion that he claimed. Then it was 10, then it was 12, then it was 15, then it was 17. I think he's trying to inch it up to 20, but I'm not sure. It's not coherent at this point. Even his own White House website contradicts him.
Marvelous. Meanwhile, during our current government shutdown, millions of Americans, from farmers to teachers, are all suffering. My question really is, what does public anger reveal about the GOP's willingness to weaponize government dysfunction for political theater?
I think that it's been hilarious over the past month, first of all, watching Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of open her eyes and go on all these podcasts. And then Speaker of the House Mike Johnson went on a podcast right when the government shutdown started and got confronted by a Republican. So seeing the public outrage, I think just clarifies that the Republicans can't get away with stripping people's health care away. That is something that manifests on a day-to-day basis. When I'm talking about Trump's corruption, it's sort of abstract to most Americans, and that's the problem with most Democratic messaging. When we're talking about January 6th or a Qatari jet or this Trump crypto coin, most Americans already view the system as very corrupt. So they think that Trump is just a part of that corruption and not unique in any regard. So I think when the government shutdown happens, this is not some abstract thing like January 6th. This is not some abstract thing like Trump crypto coin. This is legit. Like healthcare is life or death. Your premiums going up 1.5 is life or death. So you can't escape that.
So this is nothing like a Trump guitar or a Trump watch or now again Trump vodka. Some of these real estate deals that all of a sudden have taken control of, well, not Donald himself, but rather his eponymous company.
That tears away the fabric of America when he's doing that. Like long term, that rips apart what America is supposed to be, but it's more abstract and it's more frog boiling in the pot, and the pot is slowly getting hotter and hotter and hotter. But when you're stripping people's healthcare away like that, that's throwing the frog in the pot, and people are going to be like, ow, what the hell? That really hurt. And it's because of Republicans. It's because of the people who are in power right now.
So, okay. So it's a Republican government shutdown. It's the Republicans that are right now damaging healthcare for over 20 million Americans. Interestingly enough, I saw a poll. I believe it was like an Ipsos Reuters poll or something like that. And the poll showed the percentage of Americans who believe that Republicans are responsible versus Democrats. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like 57 to 43, give or take. So I'm trying to figure out who are the 43% of this country? Who are these stupid people that refuse to acknowledge, or maybe again, as you say, and I say all the time, our messaging as Democrats fucking sucks. Let me be crystal clear. Ken Martin is no great messenger. Neither is Hakeem Jeffries, and definitively not Chuck Schumer. So Who are these 43% that don't understand? The president is Republican, the Senate's Republican, the House is Republican. We see MAGA Mike Johnson shut down the House of Representatives for several different reasons, one of which is they don't want Grijalva to become sworn in regarding the Epstein files. But on top of that, they don't even want this to come to a vote. And I'm talking about healthcare.
Yeah,
how do they turn around and not see this is all? This should be a 90-10 at best.
It's a broader problem with the media environment, like you said. At some point, it's not even democratic messaging. Like we have a really good message on this. The Democrats have been killing it on this. They've been staying on message. And I think this is the best they've done since Trump has taken in office. I mean, the Democrats in power at making sure that they're sticking on one thing, not some abstract like foreign war. They're not making it about Palestine. They're not making it about this or that. Just one thing. They're making it about healthcare, which is something that people are about to experience if we don't get this renewal. I think that the problem is the ecosystem. I mean, half of the country just watches Fox News, will believe whatever they say. They'll say that the filibuster means those 7 Democrats need to sign on. But my question would be, how bad are Republicans at their job if you have 53 senators and you can't just get 7 Democrats to sign on? You can't negotiate. We passed 13 CRs under Biden because Biden actually allowed Republicans in the room. And Biden was really good at, bringing people together. His legislative accomplishments or his ability to do this was unparalleled. I mean, he made a lot of mistakes on immigration and foreign wars, and there's a lot of critiques I have, but he was good. He was good at legislative stuff. He was good at making sure the government stayed open. And Trump is refusing to negotiate in the same way with Democrats. They literally are just saying F you. There was a report that the White House was essentially saying F you to any Democrats who want to negotiate.
Yeah, well, so did Senator Thune, said the same thing, and so did Mike Johnson. Their messaging is all the same. Every day they get talking point memos from the White House, from the GOP. They say, if you're going to go on television, if you're going to be a surrogate, these are things we want you to say, which is what's there to negotiate? We'll negotiate after we reopen, after you sign on to our bill, to the big, beautiful bill. And Democrats, to at least their credit, are saying no, we're not going to do that. So let me ask you this then. Can you unpack the human cost of a shutdown, especially for those who are producing our food, our farmers, the ranchers? Are their stories being ignored? Because I don't hear much of it. Yeah, I saw a news report on a rancher who's pissed off. He voted for Trump. The fucking moron went ahead, wrote Trump 2024 on the side of his barn in stables, voted for Trump. Now his meat is being dictated by this administration, meaning the price that they can sell. And if in fact that they don't reduce the price, which of course is their profit, we're just going to import beef from Argentina. This is coming out of the White House against the people who actually voted for him.
Yeah, he's definitely ruining farmers across multiple farm industries. I think the real impact, to get to the heart of your question, the real impact immediately affects tens of millions of Americans and millions of federal workers, the people who are going to be furloughed, the people who they are trying to be opportunistic with and completely, I don't know, just fire in this moment. But then beyond the millions of people immediately affected, there's tens of millions of peripheral people, like people on the peripherals who are being affected due to the supply chain disruptions that we'll see, due to the fact that farmers aren't getting some of the help that they need. At the same time, the tariffs are cooking them, and the government is now having to subsidize certain industries or step in to help. We just saw Governor Gavin Newsom. This is probably the best example of your question. We just saw Governor Gavin Newsom yesterday mobilize the National Guard into California to make sure that veterans and that certain people could have access to the type of food that they need, the type of government support that they rely on. And this was necessary because Donald Trump is currently distracted with the ballroom, with the library. Donald Trump is using our military to strike boats in the Pacific Ocean. And the dichotomy between that and Governor Gavin Newsom using our military to help people in the streets is insane. I'm recording from Chicago right now. I live and work in Chicago, and we have like seven different agencies on the ground just causing chaos. Meanwhile, Governor Newsom is trying to do anything he can with the National Guard to help people who are being affected by this government shutdown.
Well, then how are the average Americans? I'm talking about Republicans, Democrats, independents, moderates, doesn't make a difference, processing the vast accumulation of abuses from this administration. I mean, is public outrage translating, in your opinion, into political action? Because that's what we need. We need political action, and we just we just have a hard time finding it.
People care about the administration's human rights abuses. A lot of people care about, number one, ICE and ICE's abuses of human rights and due process. A lot of people do care about corruption as far as No Kings goes. I mean, that No Kings protest was massive, so that it was huge. But I kind of touched on this earlier. My worry is a lot of Americans are already disillusioned and feel nihilistic. A lot of Americans already feel like the system has failed them. The system isn't working for them. Like wealth inequality is too high. Like healthcare is too expensive. And due to that, they don't care if Trump is enriching himself. I started a debate show a few weeks ago in Chicago. We filmed the first few episodes. And I keep talking to these young Trump supporters, like over and over, these younger Trump supporters. And they say, we don't really care if the president's getting hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. How does that affect us? He's making America great again. We think every politician is corrupt. Then they'll bring up Hunter Biden or Nancy Pelosi. So, I mean, people are quite nihilistic, and I'm worried that the average voter doesn't quite understand the scale of the corruption at play. The scale of the corruption here is unprecedented, unparalleled, and Donald Trump's wealth increase from $4.3 to $7.3 billion, $3 billion over the past 9 months, trounces what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden's net worth was $8 million when he got into office. When he left, it was $11 million because of real estate and assets and investments. It's like a normal person. So it's insane to me that Trump gets this $3 billion wealth increase in his first 9 months in office, but most Americans might not care that much.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I think your number is far from accurate in terms of $3 billion. I believe Trump has made $10 billion since becoming president-elect. I mean, he's made more than the $3 billion you're referring to just in his social media platform, Truth Social. His stock is worth over $4 billion. He has $0 invested into it. But it's funny that you say that about ICE because they happen to be here right now in my hometown of New York City. And just the other day, we all saw as ICE converged on Canal Street. And Canal Street is famous. I mean, everybody knows Canal Street is, the place that you go if you want to get a fake Rolex watch or you want to get a fake Hermes or a Louis Vuitton or a Goyard type bag. And it's not like the purchasers don't realize that the $40 Hermes bag or Louis Vuitton bag that would cost you thousands and thousands in the store are not real. They're just very good copies coming out of China. In fact, I wrote a Substack on it, Gucci knockoffs trigger homeland panic. I saw how New Yorkers behaved. They were fucking pissed. Not only did they whip out their Apple phones and their Androids and start videotaping and screaming to ICE, get the fuck out of here. They pushed them back to Federal Plaza. They did everything that they can in a non-violent way. But it did get violent too, because a bunch of these ICE officers, they don't like to be told what to do. All of a sudden, they're taking on this administration's behavior and this administration's pattern of being ruthless and abusive. I saw them take this one guy and threw him into the wall and then put him down on the ground and handcuffed him. Turns out that the guy happens to be from the Bronx. He was born in the Bronx. He's an American citizen, but they thought he too was Senegalese and mistaken identity, so to speak. Ultimately let him go, but not after a bunch of bruises and a beating.
Yeah, what they're doing in Chicago and what they've done in LA and New York, it's like they're sending undertrained officers or ICE officers into majority Latino communities and just having them cause chaos. Like in Chicago, we saw a bunch of videos coming out of super undertrained guys, like super uncoordinated, like lackluster. A few of them were trying to wrestle one woman to the ground, and one of them like slipped on themselves, and they're super untrained. And it's like, what the hell is going on here? But then on top of that, they send them into majority Latino communities, and that starts to stir shit up. And when the protests start to surround, then they use that as a pretext. It's like a feedback loop. Then the Trump admin is like, wait a minute. We saw videos on Fox News of Chicago getting rowdy. Let's send more officers there to protect our officers. Even though, by the way, Pritzker is more than happy to coordinate. At some point, like Pritzker has offered to coordinate on certain levels with the federal government. He said there are ways that we can do this where we coordinate and work together. We're more than happy to fight crime, but you can't just mobilize the National Guard against my will and against the will of the people in this state. So that's the problem with ICE. It's not that we're okay with violent criminals who are illegal roaming the streets. If there's a Tren de Aragua member, yeah, get him the hell out of here. Make sure you have due process, but you can deport violent criminals who are here illegally. No liberal is going to cry about it. And if they are, then that's dumb. But that's not what the Trump administration is prioritizing. They've been reallocating any funds that are meant for those types of deportations. And we see ICE with the budget of like the military of 5 other countries, essentially. There's some stat where it's like the massive, and they're all going around with masks on, refusing to identify themselves, ripping people who are American citizens out of cars for no reason. It's insane. This is not what America is supposed to be about.
And now with all of this going on, with this crazy ballroom for $300 million, with all of the opulent spending, with the acquisition now of 2 airplanes for, I think, Kristi Noem, Trump filed years ago a notice of claim, actually 4 notices of claim against the Department of Justice. And today, as now President of the United States, he wants to act on them, demanding $230 million. Problem here, again, I'm very clear on it. I believe that the DOJ did things improperly. I know for a fact they did. I got caught up in it. So I'm talking from firsthand experience. Russia hoax, the whole 9 yards. I'm not so sure I agree, at least entirely, with the claims on Mar-a-Lago, considering there was a valid search warrant. But the problem that I see here, and I think a lot of Republicans have said the same thing, you did file your notice of claim on time. That's when you were not president. You were just a citizen, which is correct. But you are now the president of the United States, and the institution that you're suing, you now control. In fact, not only do you control it, but the 2 people who will be responsible for determining what happens are you're both former defense counsels that you now brought into the DOJ with these high positions. How, Adam, would you say that this sort of absurdity reshapes our understanding of power and accountability in DC?
I mean, Donald Trump's entire interaction with the DOJ has been bothersome. And I've gone on a lot of right-wing shows over the past few weeks. And every time I'm on these right-wing shows, whether it's like Abby's show, Newsnight, whether it's other debates, I keep trying to ask them, what's the parallel between Donald Trump's Pam Bondi tweet that was meant to be a DM, where he names 3 people, and 2 of those people have been indicted? And nobody can give me an answer as to what Biden did that was similar. No sort of weaponization, no ask for Merrick Garland, nothing where he directs Merrick Garland to do this or do that. There was none of that. In fact, Merrick Garland was kind of weak. He kind of slow rolled a lot of the stuff that he shouldn't have. And yeah, the DOJ has definitely worked improperly before, but I think that what's different here is Trump is directly asking Pam Bondi to do things and now trying to get over $200 million from the same DOJ that he's been beefing with and undermining for years. I believe it was Supreme Court Justice Roberts or Alito, I can't remember. One of them told Trump he has to stop telling Judge Boasberg that he's like a fake, illegitimate judge. Donald Trump has broken the barrier between what the president can do how he can interact with judges, with the Supreme Court, with the Department of Justice. Even though the DOJ is within the executive branch, there's supposed to be a separation. And Biden played it so safe. Biden appointed a little puppy as his attorney general, but Republicans still see any puppy with a D on their forehead as a pit bull. He's a pit bull that's going out there. So I think the next Democrat just needs to appoint a pit bull. We need to make sure that whoever is our next AG isn't a puppy, is a pit bull, because Republicans will see it that way either way.
So I'm curious, though, because I watched you on CNN and I saw the question. I listened to you asking that question about how the comparison between what Trump is doing with his DOJ versus what Joe Biden had done with the administration in terms of the Department of Justice and the weaponization. As you know, I mean, I have a number 6 New York Times bestselling, my second book called Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the United States Department of Justice Against His Critics. I took the same issue all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, but they refused to hear my case, even though that a federal court judge turned around and made the claim that what Bill Barr and the DOJ had done was retaliation and a violation of my First Amendment constitutional rights. The judge, Alvin K. Hellerstein, in his brilliance, knew exactly what they were going to do, which was to keep on harassing me every day. And so he enjoined them from further violating my constitutional rights. And I warned America every single day that this was going to happen. But the question that I really want to pose to you is, why is whatever Joe Biden or Merrick Garland did or didn't do, why is that the denominator for what Trump and this administration under a Pam Bondi and a Todd Blanche, why is it even measurable?
Because every single time you bring up Donald Trump's weaponization of the DOJ around anyone who is even slightly right of center, anybody, the immediate response will be, well, look what Biden did to him. Biden tried to lock him up. Biden tried to do this. So the next natural question on the dialogue tree is, can you point to any example of Biden directing Merrick Garland to do anything like this? And they never can. I mean, we can pull any Republican from off the street and we can say Donald Trump is weaponizing the DOJ, and they'd immediately jump and say that, well, he had it weaponized against him as in regards to Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. And, you know, you can say that Letitia James selectively prosecuted him. You can make that argument, but
by the way, I would.
Yeah. The reality is it went through a grand jury. And I know people say a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich. Sure. But then, you know, a jury of Donald Trump's peers.
I testify. I was the key witness in that grand jury.
Yeah, I remember. It can both be true that he was selectively prosecuted and that he committed the crime at the same time. And I think that's in this. Yeah, the same thing with Letitia James. It can both be true that she was selectively prosecuted by Donald Trump and by Lindsay Halligan. And who knows? I mean, she's still innocent until proven guilty, but.
Well, yes, but not in this DOJ. In fact, not in any DOJ. But I wanted to ask you this. Is the filing of that notice of claim, you think it's a legal maneuver, or do you think it's just pure political theater that's designed to intimidate and rewrite the rules for himself?
Probably theater, but I'm not actually too read up on this. I've been traveling for the past 10 days. I'm so jet lagged right now because I had an overnight flight back from LA. And I've been traveling so much. I haven't read much up on this. I don't know. What do you think it is?
Oh, I think it's, again, I'm going to take the words that you just said. It could be both at the same time. It's definitively theater, right? Change the narrative. When the narrative right now, kicking you in the balls, is not good, pivot, right? Pivot.
You know what a really good example of that is? Sorry to cut you off, but a really good example of what you're saying is after No King's Day, Trump posted that video where he was pooping all over people's heads, including Harry Sisson. You know what I'm talking about, obviously?
Sure.
Of course. How would you not know? That is the perfect example of narrative control. So for 12 hours, Trump lost the narrative. In the headlines, it was no kings. He had no narrative control for 12 hours. People understood that the American people were angry. So in his mind, he was like, what's the most outrageous possible thing I could post right now? What would pull all of the attention back to me? And that's what he posted. And that's exactly what you just reminded me of.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So yes, while there is political theater and narrative control, he does believe that the Department of Justice was weaponized against him. And I believe the whole thing with the Russia hoax, absolutely. James Comey, John Brennan, I believe that they had it out for him for whatever, even though that they were part of the same party, they did not want him anywhere near DC. And James Comey took an act. That's just my opinion. And it's also some of the research in my book, Revenge. But it's a combination of both. But the spectacle, the narrative control, I think that dominates every single aspect. I mean, you think that, for example, when they had Volodymyr Zelensky in there and you had frickin' shady Vance over there attacking him because he wasn't wearing a suit and that he's not thankful. They knew they were losing that narrative because for the most part, Americans do not believe that Russia is our ally, right? And they do not believe that Ukraine started the war with Russia. Why? Because they didn't surrender on day one, that they started this. And so he was losing that. So what do? Attack him for being disrespectful in the White House. You didn't come in wearing a suit. You didn't thank the president, despite the fact he's thanked the United States dozens of times.
That was truly despicable because, number one, at the time, Elon Musk was running around the White House high on ketamine with no suit every single day. Volodymyr Zelensky doesn't wear a suit. He didn't in that case because he wanted to show solidarity with the troops on the front line. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that if he would have walked into the White House with a fancy suit on, that right-wingers would have been attacking him for spending taxpayer dollars on fancy suits. Oh, they're spending our U.S. taxpayer dollars on those fancy suits. They just wanted to attack Zelensky. On this topic for 1 second, it's really been pissing me off lately because, Donald Trump still doesn't seem to have moral clarity on who started this war. He was in the White House, or he was in the meeting room the other day with Zelensky, and he was like, yeah, Putin really wants this war to end. Both sides want this to end equally. This dude doesn't have moral clarity on who started this war, and Zelensky has agreed to every framework that's been proposed so far. So even after Zelensky got yelled at in the Oval Office, right, he still agreed to that shitty mineral deal. He still said that he's down for that. Then he agreed to a 30-day ceasefire. Zelensky said, I'll put down my arms for 30 days. Sure. Putin didn't. Putin kept firing. And then Zelensky said, sure, I'll meet with Vladimir Putin. Of course, I'll do a meeting. Putin didn't. Putin never showed up to the meeting. So time and time again, Donald Trump rolls out the red carpet and thinks Putin is acting in good faith and has no moral clarity. And Zelensky is the one who's acting in good faith the entire time. It's mind-boggling. And this one really infuriates me. I don't know why this one in particular, because it should be so obvious for the president of the United States to see what's going on here. And yet it's not. He sits there mumbling and bumbling in the Oval Office. And it's like, Jesus, I don't know.
It's not his fault or his fault alone. Think about Barack Obama. Think about even Joe Biden. Now, Barack Obama has always been a reader, right? I mean, I spoke to Scaramucci who would say, he never saw Barack Obama without an open book in his hand because they went to Harvard Law together. Trump doesn't believe in memos, in reading memos. So how about one of these sycophants, these enablers that are in his inner circle right now? How about take that memo and how about condense it down and discuss with him so that when you make a claim that we have $18 trillion on a tariff shelf, that you understand that there's no such thing as a tariff shelf. There is no shelf in a room, right? Locked or unlocked in the basement of Mar-a-Lago or anywhere else for that matter that has $18 trillion sitting on it. Because if there was 18 trillion sitting on some tariff shelf, we wouldn't have a government shutdown.
Yep.
Right? I mean, isn't that just crystal clear?
Yeah. I think that the thing with Obama is that he was a little bit weak. He was weak on Russia too.
He was weak across the board. Don't get me wrong. But he read and he was factually accurate. How you act is on the president. The information that you get from no one human being, alive or dead, has the answers to everything.
I just keep returning to the fact that the reason why Donald Trump is the president is because the American people are just like so sick of, this isn't like a defense of him. I'm just saying like the American people were sick of the elitism, I guess. When they had the choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, yes, Hillary Clinton still won the popular vote, but there's clearly this anti-establishment swell in America. And even my generation fell for it, unfortunately. And they wanted somebody who kind of spoke like this or didn't read. And then they wanted him again a second time, which also blows my mind even more. And it's just, it's interesting because my generation thought that he was going to come in and shake everything up. John Ossoff always has this line where he's like, you know, people thought Trump was going to unrig the system and rig it for them. But all he did was re-rig it for himself over and over and over so he could benefit. And I think that's what people are beginning to realize. But Trump he's causing a lot of problems, but there is also something deep with the American people where they want somebody. He won the popular vote. They wanted somebody who was anti-intellectual. They wanted somebody who was going to tear everything down. They were kind of sick of the Obama style. I voted for Kamala, obviously, but I know friends in high school who were just sick of the whole Obama style scripted politics. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris represented that style of politics, the scripted style.
I mean, because there's so many other issues. I mean, I could probably spend 4 days straight on this podcast talking to you. I mean, just take a look at, for example, Pete Hegseth with what he's doing now with the Department of War. Pentagon just made moves that will now limit contact with Congress, will also restrict journalists for anything that Pete Hegseth determines is not something that he, in his infinite wisdom, wants to be released to the public. I mean, what does this tell us about the state of our democracy as well as transparency in 2025?
Well, there are some journalists who are allowed. I mean, I say journalists lightly. It's like Jack Posobiec, Lindell TV. Tim Pool is for some reason allowed. Tim Pool, by the way, took hundreds of thousands of dollars from Russia monthly to do who knows what. I mean, he's very, very anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia. But I think that it's scary. And it's also hopeful at the same time in a way that all of the real legitimate media organizations banded together. I'm glad that like some of the more right-wing, Fox News were like, we're not going to do this. But at the same time, it's scary that Pete Hegseth is imposing these restrictions. Basically, unilaterally, they've been shuttering multiple media agencies. Remember when AP was blocked from the press room because they wouldn't call it the Gulf
of America versus Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. They wouldn't call it that. It's insane. And this administration is attacking our First Amendment more than any prior administration ever. People whine about the Biden admin making some request to Facebook to remove election denialism and COVID stuff. But what they're not bringing up is that Trump will use the branches around him to silence people. The Pam Bondi message is a good example. John Bolton's home being raided is a good example, trying to silence people. Jimmy Kimmel is a good example, even if it's cliche at this point. The way that Brendan Carr was talking during that was absolutely absurd. And now this is another example. Or what about the removal of people's visas if they make jokes about Charlie Kirk, which sure, Kristi Noem has the right to do, but you don't want to be creating the incentive structure for people to be scared to speak their mind in the United States of America. You don't want to create the incentive structure for press organizations to be scared to report on things truthfully because they might get sued.
Yeah, you're right. So look, Adam, the hour goes by, as I said, super fast here. Clearly, I have about 100 more questions to you, but I want to sort of wrap it up with this question. When we consider all of the threads together that we spoke about, and there's so many more, the shutdowns, the ballroom, the DOJ claim, the Pentagon secrecy, the gerrymandering that's going on, the attacks upon immigrants and small businesses. What does this tell you about the fragility of American institutions under concentrated power? And what do we need to do? Specifically your generation, largest voting bloc in America right now. What do we need to do to get it back?
I think beyond the fragility of our institutions, which has been proven by Donald Trump's ability to come in and tear down the guardrails, I've also learned a lot about the resilience of our institutions. So I kind of want to touch on both because our institutions are quite resilient. And I know I'm saying that early in his term, but I do have hope that someday my generation will kind of be handed the keys to these institutions and be able to repivot them back to where we want them. But regarding the fragility, man, it just makes you realize how most of this country was built on unspoken norms rather than written rules. Unspoken norms, as in, it was kind of implied that you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. But there's no actual enforcement mechanism if the United States president wants to do this or that. There's no actual way for judges or justices to enforce these things because the president can actually appoint loyalists to these administrations. It also shows you the fragility of science, the advancement in science. Science is very iterative in the sense that it builds off of each other decade after decade. The breakthroughs that we had in the 50s led to breakthroughs in the 80s, led to breakthroughs now. It's very iterative. It builds on top of itself. And the fact that we are halting this is going to have, implications for generations to come. So very fragile, but also very resilient. I'm just looking for a day where right now, Governor Gavin Newsom gets into office and, takes Trump's Qatari jet out of the library and drops it into the ocean. Gone with that. He tears down the ballroom right after. We make sure that the people who, committed crimes go to jail, or at least are tried. They get due process, of course. But I mean, yeah, I need an administration.
So you're talking about a whole next generation that basically spends its 4 years recreating like a Nuremberg trials or a Hague Convention. It's really kind of like what you're talking about. I mean, if they were going to tear down this ballroom for whatever the reason may be, right? It's got Trump's name on it, changed the name, whatever it may be. Imagine the amount of money that it's now going to take to destroy, forgetting about the amount of money that went in. So you're talking about $1 billion here, another. I mean, to me, it's just sort of,
I was being a bit hyperbolic. No Nuremberg trials. We don't actually have to tear down the ballroom. The point is, just to back up, the point is, I wonder.
Because you're not the first one, by the way, who said that.
No, I didn't actually mean Nuremberg trials. The joke is, the actual point is, I want somebody who's going to come in and fight. I want somebody like Governor Newsom who will actually leverage the systems that we have available to punch back in the way that we've been punched for years. There's this one viral tweet where it's like, Democrats keep saying, I thought dogs couldn't play basketball. Look at the rule book. But the dog is dunking on us over and over and over again. The point is, Democrats are like, look at the rules. Look at the rules. I don't think we actually need to take his jet and drop into the ocean. There's environmental concerns that outweigh my like fantasy there. Of course, I get that. But I need someone that's going to punch back and threaten that. Please. I need someone on Twitter who's going to threaten that.
All right. Well, appreciate you, Adam. You stay safe. I mean, you're out there quite a bit. There's a lot of stupidity that's out there. I worry for you. I worry for all of us, to be honest. I worry for the country day in and day out. So you just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, stay safe, and keep doing what you're doing because, you may be that guy one day. You may be that guy who has to turn this shit around. I would say I turn around. I would love to sort of get involved with whether it's No Kings or any of these other organizations, because there's nobody that yells louder and speaks more like the American people than I do. It's just Democrats don't understand how to fight Trump in the playground. But you do. You do. And I love the fact that you go head to head. So thank you for that. Thank you for making us smarter today, and appreciate your time.
And thank you. You stay safe as well. It's sketchy out there. I appreciate all the kind words. I appreciate every time you have me on the podcast, and I can't wait to do it again.
Thank you, my brother. See you soon.
See you.